I'm so glad to see you. It's been difficult to get us on the same page, and today here we are on the
I
same
know.
page. One of the things that happens here is that I get a document from my producer, Trudy Roth, which is a whole bunch of research. And what stood out for me was you as a young girl finding ballet and finding a work ethic and finding a passion and doing all kinds of brave things as a youngster. How did you find ballet?
You know, we moved all around after my dad was in the Vietnam War, and, when we moved back to his hometown of Baton Rouge for him to, open his own practice, he's a surgeon. My grandmother had a friend there, and she had, it was called Palmoise, a little dance school, and they had, like, ballet, tap, jazz, and gymnastics, like that kinda thing, and you did
Yeah.
all of them in, like, an hour and a half. And, I went to summer camp one summer, and I was, like, at the top of my class in this ballet school, and everyone at the summer camp, which was not a dance camp, it was just a summer camp, was better than me, and so I came home and I told my mother, "I have to find a better studio," and I ended up finding in Baton Rouge a woman who named Phoebe Brantley, who had been in the American Ballet Theater, who had been in ABT, and she was amazing and, just a really excellent teacher, and she had an excellent little company, a little non-professional company, and, I'm still friends with some of those people, very good friends actually with one of them, Brian Vincent, and, from there, I got accepted to the North Carolina School of the Arts
Right.
where they had a little summer program, and they I think they knew a lot of the regional schools, and you didn't have to audition if you were from a certain school, they knew that you had enough technique to go there, and I went, and at that summer school, they had an audition for the main school. And they
Right.
only took 2 people from that summer school into the main school because that was the real deal, and I got it, and so my parents let me go. It just turned out that because it was state supported, it wasn't very expensive. It was the same
Uh-huh.
as, like,
And you
going
were about 14 when you
I was
went to the North
14.
Carolina School of the Arts? And
Yeah, and
and
Joe
who
McDowell was
which of your parents was supportive and which is the one that said, "She's too young to go, blah, 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 blah."
they both let me go. My dad, I'm sure my mother was glad to get me out of her hair, and my dad said he knew he wanted to be a doctor when he was that age, and so they let me do
Uh-huh.
it. Yeah.
That's amazing. And then, before you were much older, you were a professional dancer
Yeah.
touring.
Yes,
Even before you could have a glass of wine, you
legally.
were dancing around the country.
Yeah, yeah. I first danced, in the Milwaukee Ballet when I was 17, and then I danced for Ballet West in New York Ci in Salt Lake City, and then from there so at that time, Sundance was just like a little movie festival you would go to with your boyfriend on the weekend and see bad movies, and there'd be, like, 4 people in the audience, and so
Uh-huh.
Redbird had an institute, and he built this space for us to rehearse, and he brought, choreographers from New York, and he brought the dancers from Ballet West when we were off season, like, in between, the spring season and the summer season or whatever it was, and he paid us all in a way to give these choreographers from New York the ability to work with a whole group of professionals in order to create a ballet, so they could
Wow.
just, like, have all these members, like, of an orchestra, if you imagine it. It's very expensive to employ a bunch of dancers to make something, and so they were able to make something that they owned then, and then now they had this ballet they could stage on on a company or something, and so I met Carol Armitage there, and she was, dating this very famous painter, David Sally, and they had done a piece for Baryshnikov at ABT at that time. She invited me to join her, and then I ended up in the middle of this big art scene in New
That's
York and
fantastic.
Europe,
It's such
yeah.
And I've seen clips of you, between takes on the Pit where you're dancing around the set. So the dancer in you is still very active.
It's kind of like a skateboarder with a ramp, It's like when you see that space, and it's a really big open space, and particularly first season, like, the shoes and the floor were just right so I could kinda spin and stuff, and it just feels, it's like a skateboarder with a ramp a surfer in a wave.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's your natural habitat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you did a lot of other things very young. For instance, you married in your very early 20s. I guess that's not so unusual back in the day, but it is now. Uh,
Yeah.
and you married a man who was quite a bit older than you and already rather famous, and Dennis Hopper. And I wondered, had you seen Easy Rider?
No, I didn't know who he was. I, was performing in LA, and do you remember Doug Kramer?
Sure.
He produced, for the audience members that don't know, he produced The Love Boat and Fantasy Island, and he had a huge art collection. And so when the ballet company came to LA, I'd never been to LA, I didn't know what direct a movie meant. I only knew that Robert Duvall, was my favorite actor. I'd seen him in Tender Mercies, and he was my favorite actor. And
Uh-huh.
so, yeah, I went to sit at this table with some old ladies, and the publicist from the ballet said, "Oh, you're not sitting there. Let me seat you next to Dennis Hopper." I had no idea who that was, and so, the rest is history. Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of something you did very early, you had a son with Dennis.
Yes.
Later we're gonna get to the things that you did again, much later in your life, but, how was it being a young mother?
It was alright. I think I'm a much better mother at the age of, I gave birth to my 2nd child at 47, and I
Yeah.
was way better prepared. I mean, I'm kind of like a grandmother now, really. I like
Yeah.
to say I wanted a grandchild, so I had one.
Yeah, that's funny. My,
Oh, you're
my
much
son,
better
my
later.
firstborn, is turning 50 tomorrow, and my daughter, is 40 and just gave me a granddaughter and they were just down here last weekend visiting for the first time, and, oh my god, holding a baby again after all these years was, a revelation and a delight and so much fun. Uh I imagine, being a parent again in your 40s was, quite something.
Yeah, it's still great. I mean, she's still young. She's 12, Eloise. I actually have her
Eloise.
Yeah, I actually have her pictures on the set. She sort of stands in as my granddaughter. Like, her photographs are Dana's photos of, I imagine, her.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, those stories of Eloise in the Plaza Hotel were one of my daughter's favorites when she was little.
She's actually named after my best friend's mother, who was called
Uh-huh.
Eloise. It
That's
was
great.
just a woman like no other, and I always loved the name.
Well, I wanna go back and say, did you finally, screen Easy Rider during your marriage to
Oh,
Dennis?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I saw all his
And
movies.
what did you think about it?
I thought it was great. It was the first time actually that they used, like, found music as score. Before that,
Right.
it was either source music, like it came out of a radio, or it's kind of before music videos. It was before they used just popular music as the backdrop of something happening in a movie. It was always
Yeah.
score.
Well,
And
I'm very definitely a '60s guy, so it was a foundational film for me. I just loved it. I'd never
yeah,
seen I guess, it's kinda like, when the first time you see somebody like you on the screen, it's kind of an amazing experience.
he really educated me in film. I didn't know anything about film. I think it's interesting that I had a good enough taste to love Duvall,
Yeah.
but he really liked a still camera. He really liked John Ford and Hawks and all these, uh, traditional, ways of shooting. He liked, simple still camera overs. But he also, he loves Spencer Tracy. He had me watch everything from, like, Bad Day at Black Rock, all the Humphrey Bogart movies. I had a whole film list. I watched, like, All About Eve, Bad Day at Black Rock, Treasure of the Sierra Madre. I can't even remember what else. I don't know if it was Death Set. I can't remember, but, like, yeah, God, who else do we watch? Last Tango in Paris.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
yeah, what was the, Streetcar Named Desire, just all the Brando movies.
Just earlier this week, I had a meeting with an attorney about something, and his last name was Kowalski. And I said to him, Stanley Kowalski created Marlon Brando, and he was like, in what play? He had no idea about Streetcar Named Desire. I thought that was kind of amazing. All those films that you're talking about are films that I saw as a boy and so loved. You have recently been quoted as saying that Mr. Hopper appears to you as a ghost sometimes. Well,
Yeah, well, they actually asked me. I did the photograph, and interview for, W Magazine, Great Performances this year, and for some reason, the interview is very whimsical that goes along with it, and she asked me, "Do you believe in ghosts?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do," because I had this experience. I wasn't really a person that believed in ghosts. I didn't wanna presume to know everything about the universe, so maybe they're around, but, I hadn't had any experience with them, but when he died, he visited me quite a bit, and so, until I told him to go away, and then he did go away, and then I was really stressed out about that, and I told my boyfriend at the time, and my boyfriend was a masseuse at the time, and he was finished giving me a massage, and he said, "Do you wanna ride home?" I'd gone to his studio, and I said, "No, I'm gonna walk," and I walked home, and there was a gallery that was not his gallery. He was represented by Tony Shafrazi in New York, like, he's very fancy, his photographs, and there was this gallery, and they had actually, this is what's really interesting. I was walking home, and I had made a movie with Henry, and I think you can find it on YouTube, maybe it's called, like, Dennis Hopper Birthday Movie or something. Henry and I made a movie for him, and right before he died, and it had all these hearts in it, and there was it was to that song, it's, "L is for the way you look at me." So we spelled out love in different ways, like on found signs, like in the movie and stuff, and so I saw this heart and this thing that said love across the street, and it was lit up, and I walked across the street to look at that sign, and that sign was in a gallery that was dark, that was lined with his photographs. And
oh
then in
my.
the back, a photograph of him winking at the camera like this, wearing a fedora and holding a cigar. And it was like he was like, "It's all right, kid." I had just had the conversation. This wasn't his gallery. I didn't go over there because I saw a picture of him. The whole thing was like this weird message. And then I think it was about a week or so later, I had a dream. He came to me, and for some reason, we were in a cafeteria in Greece, and I was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Yeah, I don't have cancer anymore." And he's like, "I'm good, I'm all good." And I never heard from him again.
How amazing. What a
Yeah.
great experience. You're the first person I'm interviewing for my podcast that I don't really know. I've interviewed people I know very well, including Noah Wiley last season. But you did do ER, and
Thanks to you.
do you remember anything about the audition?
I remember a lot about the audition, and I think it's interesting. I was a little older than I think the breakdown, and I happened to watch Kristen Scott Thomas in The English Patient the night before.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things I like about Kristen Scott Thomas is that she's always had a very mature sexuality. And, that was something one had to kind of fight for in television at that time, you know?
Absolutely.
And I walked into the waiting area, and everyone was about 10 years younger than me, and they had long hair, and they all kind of stared at me, and I knew that I had it. Like, I kind of felt like I was channeling this this thing, and I was like I remember thinking, like, "Watch the old girl get it," and I went in there. It almost fueled me. I felt like they were all like, "What's she doing here?" And it kind of fueled me, and I don't know, I just felt what do you call it? Like, in the bucket with it. I just felt like just right there with it, in the pocket, that's it, in the pocket. I felt in the
Yeah.
pocket, and,
And you had a more mature sexuality, and, I wanted to ask you about, uh, uh, uh John Wells, I think one of the great things about John Wells Productions and the shows that I got a chance to cast was that the women they centered on women. I mean, obviously the Pitt centers on Noah to a great extent, but the women characters are mature, they're three-dimensional, and I think that's something he cares about a lot, and he creates that environment, and it was such a pleasure for me not to be looking for superficiality of female beauty or female seductiveness, but to actually be casting the women I wanted to know in my own life, and the women
Mm.
the feminist women that I was 20 with when the world changed, and I had to figure out what the hell am I supposed to do if you're going to be that.
You know, it's interesting, so many of the women that you cast and, that John had in his shows, that those were my inspirations. That show, ER, I mean, who nobody had women like that on TV. Those type of women weren't leading TV, the Sherry Stringfields and the Maura Tierney's of the world. It wasn't
Yeah,
that. It was a lot of fake boobs and really long hair that
yeah,
was
Baywatch.
curly, and then you put glasses on so you were smart.
Yeah.
It was a
I
lot of that.
I was interested to see in the research that I got that one of the people you connected to was Maura, who
Mm,
I think is one of the most three-dimensional, cool
mhm.
people I've ever known. I mean, it happens that I've been in love a few times and mostly with Irish Catholic girls. So, she certainly fits my pattern. I've often said that casting is falling in love and then behaving yourself, which I have always done. Um, but you felt connected to Maura when you did the show, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, d it was just so nice there's people like her, people like Patricia Arquette, people like Allison, a lot of people from, John's shows,
Yeah,
Allison Janney, who just made me feel like I could bring my whole self to my craft, and
right.
it didn't always work out, it was really hard for us, I think, un until streaming. I think streaming really opened up more three-dimensionality, like Pretty Women could be quirky and, like,
Yeah,
you could be smart and you didn't have to just lead with your sexuality all the time. It became less about advertising products, I think. I think that whole thing where
yeah, I
people
mean,
going
and
on to kind of it
it
became
gave
more artsy.
women like you the opportunity to be beautiful, but have that not be your calling card.
No.
You could have an inner life, and you could have an intelligence, and you weren't all about. I mean, you are a beautiful woman, and I'm sure that's been an asset in your life and in your career. But it's not all you are by 100 miles.
No, and I think that's the thing is I think that time in my life being young, it was just really stressful because if you were kind of in the pretty girl thing, you felt this pressure to be so perfect within that. And it's really hard to do good work because you don't feel like you can relax. On top of it, the process is, you're so made up and you have so many spanks on it, so many things, and you're just getting the message that you're valued for that. It definitely creates a barrier to relaxation and digging deep and, like, letting go of yourself. I mean, to be kind of constantly feeling like you have to watch yourself because you have to be so pristine, it doesn't, it doesn't, encourage really good work, and that's what I love about the pit. It's like, first of all, and that's what I love about being older. It's like, I know that I'm not valued for that anymore, but
Oh,
also on the pit, just the environment, the immersiveness of it, the fact that we are supposed to kind of age during the day, everything's supposed to kind of come
yeah.
undone, we're supposed to look very put upon, we're supposed to look worn out, and that's part of the storytelling, and it's very relaxing. I think it leads to good, really grounded work.
I don't know if you, saw the show that preceded ER, but the China Beach was the first time I worked with John Wells. also with a guy called John Sacred Young and Bill Broyles. That was women in Vietnam, and
Mm.
Dana Delaney and Marg Helgenberger, and a lot of other great talented women, and that really set me up for
Mm.
wanting to be around three-dimensional women. I didn't have any objection to being around beautiful women, but that wasn't the most important thing by a long shot.
I think that what the stuff that you and John did was really important. It was really important. I think it inspired a lot of actresses. I know it inspired me. It made I think it would have I don't know. I don't know if I would have felt like
Mm.
there was room for me without those shows. It
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Those shows gave me much more attention than I ever expected or even really wanted, but it gave me a couple of those statues with the sharp, pointy wings that you've recently won one of. And where do you keep your Emmy? Right
that
behind you. Ah, there it is. You know,
I think when we move, I'll have an office. And so I think I'll keep it in the office. It's a it there it I never had this concern before. They're a little bit odd. I don't really know what is one to do. But here
well,
it is on the mantle. It's on the mantle here.
good. Well, mine are on a sideboard in the living room. I have 4,
Oh my
uh,
goodness. All
2
from
2
ER or
2
Chinese?
for ER and 2 for The West Wing.
Oh, for the West Wing.
I
Yes.
think I'm the only person who ever lost to himself. The 2 that I got for ER for The West Wing were opposite, of my 3rd and 4th nominations for ER, and so West Wing beat ER,
Oh,
and so I was both ecstatic and miserable.
that's
Um,
hilarious.
you've been all over the place doing all kinds of interviews, and which is why I'm so grateful that you agreed to join us,
Of course.
but how have you adjusted to all this remarkable success after having you were a working actor for decades, and you were a series regular a couple of times, shows that didn't last terribly long, and
No.
you had a journey, a remarkable journey. Being a working professional is actually an extraordinary accomplishment, but
Yes.
to ring the bell at the county fair in your 50s on a show that is every bit the juggernaut that ER was, how does that feel, and how have you coped with it?
Feels great. It feels great. It's great. It's great.
Yeah, oh,
It's
fabulous.
it's great to have it at this age, It's like, I I was in a I had a leading role opposite Duvall and Billy Bob Thornton in a movie. I had a leading role I played opposite Will Ferrell in a movie. I had done 8 series regulars. I had done 25 plus recurrings. I had done a billion other guest spots. I had done God knows how many films, so I came to this position with so much experience that it was just a blessing. In other words, I didn't have to figure out, can I live up to this? Do you know what I
No.
mean? I'd already been doing it so long. So honestly, it's just been such a gift. I remember last year after I won the Emmy, we were talking about what we were doing on hiatus, and they talked to me about some different projects. And I was like, okay, well, so when are you going to send me the material? And like, when am I going to put this thing on tape? And I have to audition with it. They're like, you're not going to have to audition for this. I'm like, what? Like, what? What? What's
Yeah,
happening? And I
yeah,
was
how
like, oh,
fabulous.
I couldn't believe it. And so being in a place where you just are have like given really lovely roles to do. I did a very fun movie where I play a German assassin opposite Walt Goggins in a script that is fabulous called Mister over the break. And it's like, what happened to me that someone just asked me to do it? It's like,
Yeah.
you forget how much of it, when you're struggling, is kind of a name game,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
once investors think that you have enough value, your talent it becomes enough. The hoops aren't so many, and, I actually never conceived of that because I never ever had gotten out of that position, and, so to be honest with you, it's all just been really great. It's just been
I love that I love that it
yeah.
feels just great. I mean, that's fantastic. I have to say that I share that with you. The collaborative, creative communities that I've had the honor and privilege to be a member of taught me my value and give me
Mhm.
permission to embrace my value, which,
Mm.
is a amazing gift. One other thing that I learned about you in the research that I read was that you have survived breast cancer, and that you talked a little bit about the way you were treated by medical professionals, during your, battle with it and your triumph over it, and that one thing about the warm blanket, that was given to you as a patient, what became something you did in the show, in the pit, and, I think really my favorite interactions was you with the rape victim. That storyline was just fantastic, and you were so, my 2 favorite words when I was doing a lot of casting, if I wrote "simple" and "real," that meant you did good. And
Ah.
you were simple and real in a way that was so captivating. I just loved that story. She was great too.
Oh, isn't she great? Tina Ivlev? Yeah, she was
Yeah,
great. She was amazing in person. That's not editing. She was incredible.
I'm sure, I think it's just so much fun when the writing is great and the
Mhm,
casting is great
mhm,
and the actors are talented and
mhm,
and open and real.
mhm.
What fun it is to be an actor.
Yeah, that's a really terrific director too, Uta. I think it's you say it, Breiswich, something like that. She's German. She had been a DP.
Uh-huh.
She's so interested in the detail of it, and, I don't know, just there were things that happened that weren't scripted that she caught, and, yeah, we owe a lot of the success of that episode to her as well.
I was very moved by your, sharing some of the things that had happened and the people you interacted with when you were ill. My son is a cancer survivor,
Mm,
50, 6 feet 2,
wow.
he's, and when he was sick, I stayed in the hospital room with him, and, in the middle of the night, I might cry. In the middle of the night, I woke
Mhm.
up to see a very large man who was, charged with the responsibility of taking a blood draw every couple of hours, and, he was standing there weeping.
Mm,
And there was a Scandinavian woman, who was a nurse in the pediatric, oncology department. She was kinda like Dana. She was, strong, no nonsense, and compassionate in a mixture that was very unusual at the time. It was either weepy compassion or
mhm,
kind of a removed
mhm,
uh,
mhm.
quality, and, I'm so the name of the podcast and the name of my memoir is "Right for the Role,"
Right.
and it's the culmination of our experiences that make us right for the roles in our life and in
Mhm.
your profession. Even your illness was a kind of gift.
Yeah, but the illness was a huge gift in a lot of ways in life, but it's funny, the period of time before the pit, was rough, I'm sure it was really rough on the journeyman actor because we weren't getting into rooms.
Right.
It used to be if there was 10-person session or so, 15, and a lot of casting directors knew me. They thought I was right, they'd bring me in, so I would get into this small group that got to see the director. And it kind of went from that to being either you were being offered the role because you were a name or you were going into a sea of self tapes. And so all of a sudden, I just kinda stopped working, and then I had cancer, kind of, like, back to back, and it was really hard to keep my faith, but I also, you know, I had a great attitude about cancer, because at every turn that I didn't get bad news, every little positive turn was like a win, and I just thought, "Why not me?" Like, so many people get cancer, why not me? Okay, I'm just a person, I'm just gonna go through this, I'm just gonna do the best I can. So when I finally got the gift of getting the Pitt, I thought, "Oh my god," like, I've always wanted to work for John for the reasons, you know, of the things that you and he created with these great female characters that are so multidimensional, and I thought, "Oh, what a gift." Like, I didn't get all these other jobs, and I went through this experience, but this what a beautiful gift this is at the end. For some reason, the penny didn't drop until I got there, and I was standing in Nina Russio's set, where it really feels like an emergency department. I was like, "Whoa, okay." And I realized how much my whole experience of going through cancer informed how I played Dana, because you're so, as you know, with your son, you're so vulnerable when
Mm,
you're going through that. And I think really understanding how vulnerable the patients are allowed me,
mm,
even in pretend life, and in my imaginary life, to play Dana with the understanding of how vulnerable these people are and how
mm.
much a little kindness matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I am so grateful that you joined us today. I always end these interviews by playing a little game that my mom used to play with me when I was a kid. She used to say to me, "Johnny, say 3 words to tell me who you are." And I was a feisty little brat, and so I think I said, "I'm me, I'm Johnny, and I'm a boy." Who's Catherine?
Catherine. Catherine is earthy, brave, and funny.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Catherine. I really enjoyed talking to you. You're thanks.
Thank you, John.